Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is real estate and vacation rental expert Quentin West. Now, today we're going to be diving deep into the world of short-term rentals. You guys, Airbnbs, vacation properties, VRBO, and really everything in between, right? Like you guys know the space, you understand it. But we're not just here to talk about how great the returns can be. We're going to dive a little deeper, in fact, quite a bit deeper, and we're going to shy away from returns and things and all that. We're going to talk about everything, some of the bad stuff, right? Some of the challenges that we all face as business owners. Things like market saturation, competition from hotels, bad reviews. What does that mean for someone that owns Airbnbs? All the way down to like regulatory threats, like with the ever changing environment. Lots of markets have put restrictions in place on short-term rentals. There's various operational pitfalls, and really, hopefully we'll get a broad perspective from Quentin as to how he feels about the long-term viability of the STR short-term rental model. Now, Quentin he's built a sizable portfolio of short-term rentals across multiple different markets, and he's been there, he's done it, right? He's been in the trenches, he's seen the good, the bad, and really the ugly of the business model. And today we're going to pull back that curtain, and we're going to hopefully get exposed to everything there, as it relates to his last 6 years of being deeply entrenched in the short-term rental space. And so, guys, with that, it's an honor to welcome my guest for today's show, Quentin West. Quentin, how you doing today?
Great, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you here, my friend. Excited to dive in. But before we, I guess, get into the nitty gritty of it all, maybe just take a few moments, if you would, for those that aren't familiar with you, don't know who you are, don't know your background, and tell us a little bit more about yourself. And I think, even more important is how you found your way into the STR space.
Yeah, absolutely. So for starters, I'm Quentin West. I'm the CEO and founder of Shortcut to Superhost. I built my own portfolio, and over the past 3 years, we've helped over 1,200 investors in 15 different countries start, optimize, or scale their own portfolios. People laugh when I say I got into this business on accident, but that's a real story. I was back in 2019, I guess I was 21 years old, and I had a house. I was in between jobs. I just decided to get my real estate license, and I bought a house right before that. And I was like most people that probably get their real estate license, thinking I was going to come in and just immediately start making six figures. And it didn't happen at all like that. 3 months in, I was getting pre-foreclosure notices because I literally got into the business with little to no money. And then I found out I had to pay for marketing and agency dues and all this other stuff that I wasn't really planning on paying for. But I had to do so to make some money. And so about 3 months in, I decided to move back with my parents and put my house up on Airbnb just to try to make some money to pay the bills, not lose the house. And so, the first month I made $1,000 in profit. The second month I made $1,500 in profit. And by month three of being, really consistent with revenue, I realized that if I had two or three more of these, I'd never have to work again. And so at the time I had terrible credit. I had little to no money. I think, matter of fact, the only money I had was on like a credit card, maybe 5, 6 grand. And so I went to YouTube to research creative ways to buy more properties. And I found Airbnb arbitrage, where you could rent a property and then sublease it on Airbnb. And I don't even think I finished that video. I went straight to Zillow. I started calling landlords, just taking, immediate action. And 7 days later, I signed my first contract. And I used a credit card. I'll never forget it. I sent myself a QuickBooks invoice so I could pay the invoice with my credit card, send it to my bank account, and then write a check. Because I had no money. I didn't have enough money to pay first month's rent deposit. And then I used that money to buy used furniture on Facebook Marketplace. And after that second unit really took off and I was making around the same amount of profit, I felt like I struck gold. So I went all in. I learned about business credit and continued to just give it everything I possibly could. And 12 months later, I had 12 units cash flowing 14,000 a month on Airbnb.
That's fantastic. I love that story. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? You find your way, get pushed into the corner, and you fight your way out of it. Curious to know how many conversations you had to have with landlords, because most of the landlords that are listing their property, they're in their mind, they're thinking of a typical or standard type of renter, right? That's going to live there, not necessarily play the arbitrage game and then, put it on a short-term rental website like Airbnb and run it in that manner. And so curious to know how many conversations you had to have and how many no's you had to hear until you got a yes.
Typically, I would call about 200 times to get one yes, and then typically we would have a little bit of a longer conversation, figure out the ins and outs, and then sometimes we would get all the way to signing the contract, and they would then say no. So a lot of trial and error to figure out what worked. Ultimately, I dialed it in where we could get yeses on the front end with email or text. And then once we qualified people really well, then I would get on the phone with them. And so at one time I had virtual assistants in the Philippines calling and emailing and texting owners. And then any yeses would get taken through our qualifying process. And then they would finally get to me where I would get on the phone and close them. And that turned into a really good system. And we were able to scale really fast.
I'm assuming that, I mean, the biggest objections probably of a landlord why they would say no is they just in their mind, their property is going to get used quite a bit heavier than that of a just a standard renter that's going to be there for a 12-month span of time, right? Like kind of the wear and tear is going to be much more significant. Was that the primary concern?
Yeah, that's the concern. That is a big concern, but most of it is lack of knowledge. They hear Airbnb or like corporate rentals is how we try to front load and kind of use that as a Trojan horse to get in the door. But they hear those terms and they just don't really know what it entails.
Hmm.
So your job as an arbitrage business owner is to show them why it's more beneficial. So somebody would think that, with all the in and out, that there is more wear and tear, but there's actually less because people aren't bringing their furniture in. They're not sliding refrigerators and appliances across the floors or, doing the stuff that long-term tenants do. And even when there is damage, it's in our best interest to keep the property in show-ready condition. So if somebody puts a ding on a wall, we send in a claim to Airbnb, we get paid for it, we fix it. So that, really it actually works out better for the landlord because the day that we move out, if we ever do, the house is still in almost show ready condition because we've been touching up paint, we've been handling small repairs ourselves, and anything below $200, we don't even call the landlord for.
Hmm.
Uh, even down to like generic repairs that, like if a toilet is, leaking or clogged or something like that, they're not getting those calls because it makes more sense for us to just fix them because then we won't inconvenience the next guest, that may cost us more money than just to
Yeah.
fix it ourselves.
Interesting. Are you typically trying to get a longer commitment up front with the landlord than just your standard 12-month lease? I mean, obviously there's got to be like a payback period of you guys having to furnish units and like you might just be hitting your stride and then all of a sudden like your 12-month lease is up, right? And you got to start over again. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so any new market, we always do a 1 year first. But
Okay.
what we do in the back end is we negotiate a 3 year option to renew. So we have the option to renew. They do not have the first option to cancel the contract. So that way we know exactly what our rent's going to look like for the next 4 years. And then if it does exceptionally well the first year, we know what we're paying the next year if we decide to renew.
Hmm. Got it. No, that's
So not locked
interesting.
into a long-term commitment.
Have you noticed, so like you got your start kind of rolling into COVID and COVID just, created rocket fuel, especially for like staycations, right? People weren't, internationally
Yeah.
traveling as much and just, the real estate market, generally speaking, boomed, but, short-term rentals just like took off like a rocket ship, right? And so
Yeah.
what, I guess, how is your portfolio, if you had to make a comparison between the golden COVID years, and seeing probably all-time high numbers to what it looks like in a post-COVID world. Have you seen performance slide down, stay even keeled, or even maybe go up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a little bit lower now. When COVID first hit, we had a couple months where it was super slow because people didn't really know what was going to happen, and we had everybody staying in their homes, and so they just obviously weren't traveling. But then we had a huge spike that everybody, I'm sure, has heard about, and then it's leveled off a little bit since then. Now I would say we're back, pre-COVID numbers, maybe a little bit higher. But also our model has shifted a lot since then.
Mhm.
The strategies that we're using, the optimization that I learned during that time, um, really made a huge difference in our overall revenue and profitability. And that's part of what we teach now. That's the foundation of everything we do.
Yeah. So is your entire business model like your, I guess more speaking to your personal portfolio, is it still 100% arbitrage or with the exception of the one, your first property, or is it more of a hybrid model to where you still do the arbitrage game, but then you've also started buying some of your own real estate?
So I'm not buying any more, and really, we're not launching any more singular units. We're kind of at the point where as like spoiled as this kind of sounds, I'm looking more towards multifamily and commercial assets. We got 45 units currently. I own three of those. We arbitrage around 20. And then we do what's called fractional hosting on the rest of them. So this is a new model we created. It's similar to co-hosting, but we're not managing any of the cleaning or maintenance. So we're using what we're really good at and what most hosts are not. And we're managing the pricing, the marketing, and the guest communications for them while they manage all the on-site workload.
Hmm.
And so we're able to scale really fast with that. It's just a model that we broke into out of necessity, honestly, because we had some folks that were reaching out to us for coaching. They couldn't afford our higher ticket packages to teach them how to do it. And so it was a door into a new model. And that's what I'm most excited about this year because you can get started with no money.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah, I don't even know what co-hosting is. I mean, are we talking like similar to like co-living type
It's
arrangements?
similar to property management. So Airbnb termed the word co-hosting.
Okay.
So, property management and co-hosting are different in the way that a traditional property manager manages everything. They manage the profile, they manage the bank accounts, they have a trust account where they have to balance out at the end of every month, and typically they have to be licensed. Airbnb created the term co-hosting to segment off a different model where you don't manage a trust account. Airbnb splits the funds up automatically. So the reason why you typically have to be licensed is you're managing somebody else's money. But with co-hosting, you don't. Airbnb will split the money up. They'll give you your 20%, they'll give the owner their 80%. And then in most states, you don't have to be licensed to co-host for somebody. Fractional hosting goes a step further. We're not managing anybody else's money. We're not managing cleaners. We're not managing maintenance. We're only doing the financial aspects of the business, the pricing, the marketing. We're building out their direct booking site. We're getting them on multiple platforms. We're making sure they're optimized, and we're speaking to their guests on their behalf.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think I understand the model, but I'm not 100% on it. So just act like I'm a third grader
That's
and
okay.
walk me through the basics. And I'm hoping that those that are tuning in also have
Yeah,
some of these same questions and don't have a full sense of clarity on it. So with
yeah,
that, please. And I feel like I'm
absolutely.
pretty smart, but I'm still not fully
That's okay.
comprehending exactly
That's
what this
okay.
model looks like and who would use it. Like, who's this ideal for? Um, it's just like who's your client at that point in time, and why
Yeah.
do they choose this model versus a more traditional model?
Yeah, so let's say you have a property and, since COVID and previous years, your revenue has dropped significantly. It's gotten significantly harder to compete on the platform. Airbnb went public. Now they're really prioritizing profitability and conversion more than anything. If you don't understand marketing, you're going to miss out on a ton of additional revenue. So you're going to seek out a company like us that helps you, learn optimization and how to market and price. But if you can't afford that, then you may choose a fractional hosting company where we do the pricing for you, we do the marketing, we message your guest, we just don't manage cleaning and maintenance. So you pay us 12% of your revenue, nothing up front. We handle the hard parts that you don't understand, and you can continue operating your business for a much lower cost compared to paying a property management company 20 to 25%.
Okay, understood. So the standard property management company that would have done the soup to nuts, as far as short-term rentals are concerned, they're charging 20 to 25%.
They're
I
charging
got, okay,
25%. They're
okay,
managing the whole process. They're taking over your profile with fractional hosting. I just
got it.
attach myself as a co-host to your profile. So you're still in control of everything. I just manage the pricing, the marketing, and the guest communications for you. And then you can access a much higher revenue number because of the knowledge that we bring to the table.
Have you found challenges with educating the marketplace of who you are and your service and what it could do for them and why it's better?
Not at all.
Okay,
Not at all.
interesting.
Typically, it's, you know, the reason people reach out to us is because they don't care to learn the pricing and the marketing. It's especially older folks where maybe they're not super tech savvy, and they don't care to even learn it, but they want to get access to the higher revenue. In the past 90 days, we were just looking at our numbers. We've increased average revenue by 18%. We're charging 12. So they're still making 6% more by doing a
Yeah.
third of the work.
So really, your business moving forward. I mean, you're more of an agency or a consultant or whatever you want to call
Yeah,
yourself,
it's more
right?
of an
To support.
agency model,
Yeah.
more of an
Yeah.
agency model for sure. And they're two separate companies. So we've got our fractional hosting business that, just kind of naturally progressed. And then we have our coaching company where we can also teach people how to fractional host.
And
So it's super
what's
complicated.
yeah, and what's the reason for not expanding upon your portfolio with the short term rentals that you currently, whether you said you own three, you have an arbitrage model like another 20 or so, but like
Yeah.
help me understand kind of the mindset there of not continuing to stack up your portfolio.
Yeah, so with arbitrage, number one, people are increasing rent year after year. So we've let go of a couple properties because they're increasing rent. I'm super busy. I don't really care to meet with owners year after year to negotiate renewals and increases in rent. And if it's too high, now we've got to move the furniture somewhere else. And also, I can get into fractional hosting for no money. I can go and sign one client and make $500 to $1,000 a month, whereas I'm making the same or maybe a little bit more with arbitrage, and I'm having to invest 15 to
Yeah,
20 grand.
understood.
So it's
Understood.
an infinite ROI. We're investing nothing, and in some cases, I've gotten paid within 24 hours. We got a $600 payout within a day of signing the first client.
How selective do you have to be this fractional model on the actual unit itself, right? Like because you guys you want it to be a win-win, right? And you
Yeah.
want to be able to actually show a benefit, but if it's not a great property or not a great layout, not a great market, whatever, like it could
Yeah.
ultimately have a negative impact on your business and your reputation. So how do
Absolutely.
talk to me about the thought process and how deep you guys go in due diligence to, I guess, and this is also probably applicable, I guess, depending on how you answer the question, but just how someone that's maybe looking to do the more traditional short-term rental model business, like how do they pick the right markets? How do they make sure that they're not going into a market that's not oversaturated, where they can be competitive and they can, create a product that performs incredibly well?
Yeah, yeah. So with choosing a market, just think about all the markets that are hot on social media and the internet right now, and I would say just avoid those. We use what's called the Golden Triangle method. We find three spots within 30 minutes of each other that are high traffic, and we choose a location in the middle that may not be top of radar for most people, but still have the same amount of traffic. So in those locations, you're typically going to have less competition. You're going to have cheaper home prices or rental rates if you wanted to do arbitrage. But you're having very similar revenue numbers with short-term rentals, and you have the traffic. You have lower regulations. There's just so many other benefits compared to trying to just jump into a highly competitive market like some of these major cities like Gatlinburg, Sevierville, and you can make just as much profit, sometimes more. I mean, we've had very small markets where you would think, who is even traveling to that location? But if you look at the areas surrounding it, there is a lot of travel. And we're setting up right in the middle of them. And so we're catching all the flow traffic through all three different locations, and it's keeping us busy. And we really don't have any real threat of oversaturation or regulation or competition.
How do you guys, where do you pull the data from to help you make a better decision on this, inside this golden triangle? Like, there's got to be some data and some science involved on if you don't already own or manage something there today, right? Like all the key indicators, point that this should be a successful location. However, we're not 100% yet. Are there, I know AirDNA is one of them. There's probably a litany of other different types of data providers out there, but walk us through what that looks like on your guys' side to help make a good educated decision on a marketplace.
Yeah, so AirDNA is definitely a big tool. We also look at traffic count. You can, search up a location and, look at the traffic count. You can look at national parks and how many people visit them each year, and find surrounding markets on AirDNA that may be smaller and, have a lot less competition. That's typically what we will do. ChatGPT is also really a great tool. At first it was giving skewed results, but as it's getting better, you can ask it all kinds of questions like, the top visited, national parks or attractions in the U.S., and it'll give you a list, and then you can ask it to do a deep search to find the traffic count, and then you can ask it to find smaller towns around it that still have access to that traffic. So using a combination of those is really a great model of ours. But to keep it simple, AirDNA is a absolutely great tool. You can certainly start at some of these larger destination spots, but then what I like about AirDNA is it will give you a map view, and you can look at that hotspot and choose smaller cities around it, and it'll give you a rating for the market. It'll show you the regulation level. It will show you the properties in the area, even revenue numbers. So it's just a great tool to, initially find a hotspot as a starting point and then work your way out until you find a city that makes sense for you.
Yeah. How about regulatory risk? I know there's a number of markets across the country over the last 5 years that have really, batten down the hatches on, just
Yeah.
licensing requirements or, changing, your standard, short-term rental that maybe didn't have a minimum night requirement to now 30 days or maybe 90 days. How do you stay ahead of that to where, and again, I guess you providing this service, you're not necessarily the one taking the risk, but I guess speak to those that are the ones that are, the investor, the ones that are buying these homes or condos or properties that they intend to put on a short-term rental basis. How do we navigate those uncertainties in the marketplace?
Yeah, so before you either sign a lease or buy any property, the first thing you should do is call the zoning and planning department. That way you can figure out what current laws exist, what current regulations are out there, and if there's anything pending. That'll give you an idea of what's coming up or what already exists, and then you can make a decision, on to move forward or not. But if you're in a market or considering one that is a hotspot, um, markets that are more established or around more established markets will probably follow the same trend of the ones connecting to them, especially if they're in the same state. So like Sevierville, Gatlinburg, like they have a lot of history. I doubt they're going to implement any regulation anytime soon, at least. And so any surrounding markets probably will follow suit if they haven't yet. Markets like, New York City that did a complete ban, outside markets are probably going to follow their suit eventually. And so just look for trends like that that may give you an idea of like a foreshadowing of what's coming.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great point. So again, I guess maybe talk back to this fractional model. I think you would reference one of the areas like you're really doing a lot of the marketing and position the property accordingly on the marketplace Airbnb, and just ensuring that it gets the exposure that it needs, and you drive traffic and eyeballs to it. They're in charge of cleaning and repairs and things like that. How do you help me understand managing quality control across, like, you've got your client that owns a property, they're kind of still in charge of the clean, deal with the cleaners, deal with the repair guys. I mean, you're doing your job, you're getting the eyeballs there, but they're not keeping up with the quality control piece of it. How do you manage that?
Yeah. So first thing that we would do if they're just not keeping up is provide them with some resources or systems to improve. If they're still not improving, then we may decide to part ways. Like we've had a couple clients where, they were continuously getting into arguments with the guest. Like
Mm.
they would jump in and override our communications and argue with the guest saying that this happened or this. And you just really can't have that in this business. It's more of a liability than anything. So in those cases, we just decide to separate. And that's another great reason why fractional hosting is a great model. It's not like traditional property management where you're kind of attached at the hip to the owner. Their listings on your profile, you
Yeah,
control all the process. With fractional hosting, we just go in and we disconnect our co-hosting account and we're done.
I got you. Okay, so it's always underneath their profile, so it's really no reputational risk for you guys. It goes back on their shoulders, correct?
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean the reviews and reputation will still affect us on the platform.
sure.
Hopefully you catch things like that before, it dramatically affects your performance or your credibility.
How do you manage a string of bad reviews? If it does happen, which I'm sure, certain things just fall outside of your control where, there's an issue, it wasn't addressed. One tenant had, or a renter had an issue with it, and then it didn't get addressed. Anyway, just got negative reviews for XYZ reasons, but you've got a couple of them. Can you rebound on the platform once you've got a few?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the end of the world. I mean, we have a couple properties that just aren't the greatest. They're just not high-end properties. They're lower quality. We knew that going in. We knew they would get lower quality reviews. In some cases, you may want to separate profiles and have like a separate profile with your lower quality properties. That way, it doesn't affect your superhost status and really impact your main account. Um, but if you get those negative reviews, I mean, first you would want to try to get them taken off, of course. We have a AI chatbot that we built that cross-references Airbnb's review policy with the review that was written and any context we give it. And it will write up a claim that we can submit to Airbnb to have the best chance of getting it taken down. So
Hmm.
that's been a huge resource for us and our clients to get negative reviews taken down, especially if they may not be relevant or true. Um, but if you have some that are just sticking and you can't get them taken down, then the best way is to just keep trying to get positive reviews. You used to be able to just like delete the listing and relaunch it, but they've really cracked down on that, and now they're catching on to Airbnb's cracked down on it. They're catching on to what people are doing, and they're matching up addresses and deleting review or deleting listings if you try to just duplicate it and start over.
Yeah. What are some of the proactive steps you can take with your renters to, just really keep a consistent string of 5-star, experiences and reviews on the platform? Are there, do you guys have a little secret book of, we do these 10 things every time to ensure a, high quality guest experience?
Yeah, getting photos taken from the cleaners after they clean the property is a great way to get ahead of the game. That way, if there is anything that's standing out, you can pinpoint it yourself by looking at the photos, or you have something to go back on because we have had guests that come and they like frame something in the property. Um, so at least we have that proof that the property was cleaned. This is what it looked like before the guests got there, and now the pictures that they're sending are not lining up. But also getting ahead of the game with negative reviews is just having more touch points. Most people are reasonable to the fact that if you're really trying and following up with them and making sure any hiccups get taken care of, then they're not going to leave you at least a 1 star. They may leave you a 4, but that's a lot less impactful than a 1. But we've seen many hosts where, somebody complains and they're like, well, we'll get somebody there next week. And with Airbnb, that's just not good enough. Like if they're not taken care of, one, they could file a claim with the Airbnb and get minimum 33% of their money back.
Hmm.
But two, they're not going to leave you the greatest review if you're not taking care of the issue.
Right, right. How about, again, I know that this is not the business model that we're talking about now, but I want to hit it from a couple different perspectives, and there's surely folks that are tuning in there. Either they own their own, short-term rentals, or they're looking to get into the business, but they actually want to own the units. And so I guess challenges around hiring and retaining, reliable local vendors, the cleaners and handymen. Is that difficult to do? I mean, I just
Yes.
dealing with service providers, generally speaking, it's always I've always had challenges with it, but I'm wondering if that's on a mass scale. If that's like one of the biggest hurdles that folks have to figure out how to overcome.
Yeah, no, it is a huge hurdle. I used to own my own cleaning company, and then we decided to get rid of it because it was just constant hiring and firing and retraining and hiring. And I mean, you'd be lucky if you could get someone to last 60 days. I mean, anybody that lasted longer than that, like you really wanted to try to keep them happy and keep them around. Um, but yeah, the trick that we've kind of found is one, set expectations on the front end. You know, if people don't know what you expect, then they're definitely not going to be able to deliver it. So doing some training, setting expectations, walking them through what you want out of them as a provider, is the best way to get started on the right foot. Because you wouldn't be surprised how many people come and clean a property, and like the very first time there's stuff that's left around, there's food wrappers underneath the beds because doing they're not cleaning as diligently as you or I would. um, and so just setting those expectations, doing walkthroughs, letting them know you will be checking up after them. All of those things are extremely important. Also, communicating how important positive reviews are and showing them how your success is ultimately their success.
Hmm.
You know, because if you communicate to them that, hey, if we get a 4-star review, that could be one less booking a month. That's, $1,500 a year less that you're making if we get one less booking a month. So it's in your best interest to make sure that we succeed as well. And that starts by, doing a great job every time, checking off this list that we give you, sending us photos, making sure we get great reviews, and then we all win.
Yeah. How do you mitigate the risk associated with, just being beholden and 100% relying upon Airbnb, right? I mean, you
Um,
sneeze the wrong way, they kick you off the platform, right? I know that's probably extreme,
yeah.
but is there a clear path to start eliminating that risk, that single platform risk, once you have an established short-term rental
Yeah.
unit? Okay, how do
Yeah.
you do that?
Yeah, so there is a software called StayFi. So think about if you go to like a Starbucks or Panera Bread, they have a Wi-Fi portal where you log in, you give them your name, your email, and then you can use the Wi-Fi. StayFi works in the same way. You install it in your Airbnb. Anytime somebody wants to access the internet, they provide their information. Now you collect that data and you can send them email marketing to send them like discounts and incentives to come back and remind them how to find you and book directly. And then as you build that list over time, you rely less and less directly on Airbnb. And now you have your own database where, even if Airbnb shuts you off, you can at least keep the lights on for a little while until you learn how to pivot and, get on another site or figure out another marketing method.
How long does that normally take to get established? I mean, what have you seen?
Yeah, it, at least a year to really
Okay.
get some solid traffic, because you have to think that most people are not going to travel to the same place in the same year. So, if you only collect 5 people a month, that's 60 people a year.
Yeah.
And maybe 10-20% of those are going to come back. Um, and, even smaller percentage of those are going to actually stay in your place. So, getting their information, making sure you provide a great experience for them, and then you show them an easy way that is more affordable to get back in touch with you and book your property again. That's the key. If you're not doing all those, then there's going to be a hole in your bucket and it's not going to work. If you don't give them a good experience, they're never going to want to book with you, regardless of what you
Sure.
collect. So,
What's Airbnb taking? What's their cut?
depends on the model that you choose. So you can choose to either do um, like a split pay, I think is what they call it, where you pay 3% and the guest pays the rest. And then the other model, I want to say they take 12% if you pay it all, 12 or 15%. We do the split pay, so we pay three, and then the rest is passed on to the guest. And really, either way, the guest is pretty much paying for it. It just displays a little bit differently on the platform.
Yeah. So like the 12% though, to use the number of what it's costing. I guess so. I guess where I was going with that question is if you were not going to rent out through the Airbnb platform, you built up your reputation. You've got people that are coming back staying again. You could technically offer them a 10 to 12% discount,
Yeah,
and it goes directly to their pocketbook.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good deal. What else, Quentin? What else haven't I asked you, buddy, about the business, the model, the good, the bad, the ugly?
Yeah, the ugly is the whole year that I went through of almost going bankrupt. So about a year, I'd say a year and a half, 2 years in, I hit 47 units and I was super over leveraged. And this was like right before COVID. Um, and I went from like 130,000 a month to borrowing quarters for my kids' piggy bank within 5 months. Super over leveraged. I spent basically all my savings to start 11 units at once. Um, and it just didn't work out. I started 7 units in Arizona in the middle of July. So people don't really like traveling when it's 120 degrees in Arizona. So I had little to no bookings. I was paying around 65 to 70,000 a month in rent at that time. So obviously, if there's no money coming in, there's very limited months that I can go on like that. And that's where I really got into optimization. I really bounced off of rock bottom super hard, and started seeking out other coaches and mentors and investors that had bigger portfolios than me that had been through things like that. And ultimately, I came to the realization that I was dramatically underperforming. And on every property that I operated, I was losing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month on every unit that I owned. And so when I saw that, I kind of saw the light at the end of the tunnel because if I could bridge that gap, then I could slowly pay my way out of the hole that I dug for myself. And so I started optimizing my listings and like one after another, they started picking back up. And, I would see myself on the front page more frequently. And was getting more bookings. I was getting a higher nightly rate. And it's like, this stuff is really working. And then over the course of about a year and a half, I dug out of that hole. I went from, owing 150,000 to American Express and like 70, 80,000 in rent and just like light bill after power bill after, you name it. I had 47 units. So rentals, rental amounts, power bills, water bills, gas, internet, all those creditors were calling me every single day, asking me for money I didn't have. And so when I dug out of that and got on the other side and learned how to automate my business and now start treating it like an actual business and not over leveraging myself at every corner, people started asking me questions. And I realized how much in demand that skill actually was. Like
Mhm.
there are so many people that without even knowing it, they're missing out on 10, 20, $30,000 a year in additional revenue they'll never see if they don't learn about optimization. And that's when I started helping people, more or less, I call them rehabs at first. We would rehab their listing, where we would help them with their marketing, their pricing, and help them get back on the front page and take them from, maybe a booking every 3 weeks to getting booked consistently back to back to back and filling their calendar. Um, and now that's what I love doing more than anything right at this moment. We recently took a guy from, he was a builder out of Oklahoma. He had 4 properties, and he was considering letting them go to the bank. And when we met, we were like his last ditch effort. We financed a package for him. We got him in, and 9 months later, this is like 3 weeks ago, he sent me a link, and he just featured on TV for the most wish listed property in Oklahoma. So, going all the way from thinking about giving them up to now having a thriving business. He has his own virtual assistants, his own systems built out. He's taken on co-hosting clients and local management, making tens of thousands of dollars more every year because of the optimization that we helped him with.
What was he doing wrong? I mean, like, if he had multiple things, but like the biggest thing he was doing wrong to where that he was failing, what was it?
Yeah, so it's optimization is not about one single thing. It's all the things that add up. So we call it the theory of constraints. There are so many different things you could be doing that is restricting the amount of views that you're getting. And then even the views that you're getting, you're not converting them at a high rate because you're either not showing them what they want to see, you're not priced at a rate they're willing to pay, and all those things add up to a lot of vacancy. And so, one of the first things we do when we analyze a listing is go through potential constraints. A constraint could be like if they have a 5 night minimum, they're only going to be shown to people searching for a 5 night stay or above. They're not going to get shown to anybody searching for a 4 night or below. So, something like that may be something we remove. Now they get double the views. Their pricing is a big one. If they're way too expensive or way too cheap, Airbnb is going to suppress a ranking because think about it from Airbnb's perspective. You are an asset to them. If you're way too expensive and their algorithm doesn't believe you'll get booked at that price, why would they put you on the front page?
Hmm.
They're not going to
Yeah.
because you won't make them money. So they'll suppress you in the ranking. And on the other hand, if there's 50 other properties that are a little bit more expensive than you and you're dramatically cheap because you're just trying to get booked, they're not going to make as much money either because they know people are willing to pay more. So they'll suppress you there as well. So, you really can't guess on your pricing. You have to understand marketing at a high level to really, perform at your peak in the market and beat out the competition. And that's what we specialize in. And that's what was able to bring him to the top. Now he's the second highest grossing cabin for his size in the market.
What part of Oklahoma? I don't know what.
Broken Bow.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Major vacation destination, right?
Yep. Major
There's,
vacation destination, over 7,000 cabins. It's very competitive.
I don't think there's any other place like that in Oklahoma. That's why I jokingly
No,
asked.
no, there's not. Not that I
Yeah.
know of, at least.
Yeah. Well, good deal, Quentin. Well, no, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. So, for those that want to learn more, they're interested in your service, or just some. I know you have a lot of educational training videos or resources. Where's the best place to track you down?
Yeah. So we actually have a free course. That'd be a great place to start. So if they text Superhost to 26786, SUPERHOST, they'll get access to that free course, or they can find me on Instagram at Q Deals Homes.
Alrighty. Well, good deal, Quentin. I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care now.